Hello, this is an introduction to arrays in MATLAB. First thing I'd like to do is to define array using one of the many ways that you could define an array, which is shorthand notation. So here I'm going to define an array and with the name A, capital A, and I'm going to enter in numbers 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And these three numbers are separated by commas and enclosed by the square brace. Now, an array can be named just like any other variable in MATLAB, and provided it follows those rules that were specified previously. So here I've just defined the array with three numbers separated by commas, and I hit enter, and MATLAB tells me that because I did not have a semicolon, it's going to tell me what I did. And it says that what you've done is entered in an array that has values of 1, 2, and 3. And up here in this workspace area, you can see it's defined this variable. MATLAB is somewhat generous with its notation in the sense that you can skip the commas and enter in an array. So here I'll create an array called B and hit enter, and it says B is equal to 1, 2, and 3. So the commas are optional. I encourage you to use them because there are certain cases where if you don't have the commas, things can get a little bit strange and can become confusing. And that we may or may not encounter in this class, but you'll certainly encounter it if you program for long enough in MATLAB. Okay, so that was the first way to create an array. It's with the square brace and comma separated list of numbers. Now there's another way, and the other way is to use shorthand notation. So here I'm going to say C is equal to 1, 1, 3. And what this means is that I want an array, and I indicate that by surrounding a bunch of numbers with square braces, and I want that array to have elements that start at the value 1 and go up in steps of 1 all the way up to the number 3. So this is the same thing as I had typed previously, 1, 2, and 3, but now I'm just using a shorthand notation. And let's see what happens. C is equal to 1, 2, and 3. Now I can go up to any number. I can go up to 8, for example. C is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I can start at different values. I can start at 2. And let's see what happens in this case. Now it gives me an array that starts at 2 and goes all the way up through 8. Now this middle number is how big of steps I want to make. So I can go from 2 to 8 in steps of 2. I can go to 2 to 8 in steps of 3. And then the next question you would ask is what happens if I choose 4? Well, in this case it goes 2 to 6, and the next number would be 10, but that's higher than the last number, which was 8. And so by convention, MATLAB says I'm going to stop at 6. I'm not going to give him anything more than that last number. The next thing I want to do is to show you how to define arrays in a third way. And the third way is to just define a matrix by entering in manually what the values are. So here I'm going to create, excuse me, I said matrix, I meant to say an array. So I'm going to create an array D whose first element I'm going to assign the value of 1.0. And what it responds is that he's created an array, and the best MATLAB knows is that the array that I want has one element. And so it responds with everything that has to do with that array at this point, which is just that it has one value. Now I can say the second value of an array D is equal to 2.0. And what will happen is this. Because there was no semicolon, MATLAB says, okay, now this array it has two elements because he's entered two values for it, and I'm going to respond and tell you exactly what values are there. And so I can continue this on, defining the third value as this, and so on. So now what happens, or what do you think is going to happen if I do this? Suppose I say D of 10 is equal to 13. Now I've defined what the values of the arrays are for 1, 2, and 3, and I haven't said 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and now I'm going to jump to 10. Well, MATLAB is going to make an assumption. It's going to assume that I want all of those numbers, or all of the elements of the array D that were not specified, being set to 0. And I'll show you this by setting D of 10 is equal to 13. Even though I never said anything about D4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, it assumes what I meant was to assign it the value of 0, and then it gave me the value of 13.